Hey guys, in this video, I want to do a full and extensive review of the C-Quartz TiO2 ceramic coating from CarPro. So we're going to be talking about the what, the why, the when, the where, the how behind this product. But before we get into that, I do want to address what we're doing leading up in the video to actually applying the ceramic coating. So if you're interested in just the ceramic coating content, go ahead and skip more to the middle of this video and you can find that information there. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the business of paint correction because it wouldn't be a Wilson Auto Detailing video if I didn't address the business aspect of what's going on here. So before we get into the ceramic coating, let's talk business. One of the questions that ends up coming in all the time through email messages and all sorts of different things is, when should I start doing paint correction? How do I start doing paint correction? What polish should I use? What polish do I use? All of these things. And really, I kind of want to answer this question with a non-answer and give you guys a little bit of food for thought. In this video, we're dealing with this awesome new Mercedes that a maintenance client of mine owns, and we are obviously putting a ceramic coating on it. It's been prepared before the paint is being corrected, actually, as you're watching in this video. But barring those details, because we just don't need to talk about them, paint correction is not actually something that I started out with in my detailing world and business back when I was just a little chump starting the business. And there are a lot of reasons behind that, and I want to list those out for you today so that you guys have a bit of more context and a better system and kind of mental model to use when you're trying to figure out how to maximize profitability in your detailing business. So the first business rule that I have for you guys today is simply this: wait on introducing paint correction into your business. There are a few reasons why I say this, and one of the biggest reasons why people are always asking the questions so immediately after starting their business, and in some cases before they've even started, is because there's this huge kind of what you might call social media culture surrounding paint correction. Guys like me post these videos of doing some paint correction on a sweet black paint Mercedes. Looks awesome, looks fun, looks like a high dollar job, and while yes, it is all of those things, in a really big way, you're kind of trying to build the second story of your house before you build the first story. Now, are there detailing businesses that major in paint correction, major in ceramic coatings, major in PPFs, things like that, that they really only do that? Yes, of course there are, but there is so much money and so much foundation to be made and to be laid in your detailing business without the paint correction being introduced that in many ways I've seen guys really crash and burn trying to introduce too many things in the beginning rather than focusing in. We end up really underestimating the power of focus, especially in the beginning stages of your business. And so you're trying to do everything that has the potential to bring in money rather than maximizing the things that have a very low barrier of entry to bringing in money and bringing in a lot of money in a very immediate sense. So yes, I'm using my Rupe's LHR Mark II, LHR 21, 21 millimeter throw, 6-inch dual action polisher. That's a mouthful, with the perfect or the flawless finish from Sonax. It's their finishing polish. And I believe I'm just using a spider pad from, I believe it's Lake Country. It might be 3D Car Care. I can't remember exactly. But my point here is my paint correction side of the business was not introduced till about 4.5 years into building a detailing business. And by that time, I had made a very significant amount of money just offering simple detailing services. And when I say simple detailing services, really a better word would be just regular detailing services, right? So essentially what you're doing though when you offer the paint correction in the beginning stages of your business is a lot of times guys veer off, and that's where they want to focus. And so they end up putting all this pressure on offering that particular service rather than putting a pressure on what so many people want and getting customers in the door with just regular details, that you're casting kind of a small net, a much smaller net than you need to be casting. It's far easier to create more business with people whom you've already done business with. This is what I talk about in the concept of having maintenance clients, but this also extends into the paint correction business sort of conversation. It is far easier to do paint correction services and to close customers who want paint correction services when you have already done business with that customer in the form of regular, simple, straightforward detailing than it is to offer paint correction to people who have never met you before, never actually done business with you before, before. Now, yes, I offer a ton of paint correction with people who I don't have a relationship with and who are completely new customers, but the point remains the same. When you start building your customer information list, when you start building your maintenance list, when you start building your detailing business list of customer information from the simple details that you offer, interior, exterior, complete detail, simple add-ons like headlight restoration, all that sort of thing, black trim restoration, scratch removal, those simple things. Overall, paint correction, ceramic coatings, and all these other more advanced things become much, much simpler to introduce over time. Now, rule number 2 goes hand in hand with rule number 1. Rule number 1, of course, is wait to offer paint correction services. Establish your detailing business, establish cash flow, establish income, establish customers before you get into the higher, more advanced things. Rule number 2 goes right along with it, and that is be careful when you start, because if you're not careful, paint correction services and the things that follow can be what I call a high cost and high disappointment service. Now, what I mean by this, I want to break it down. I want to break it down by giving you the opposite. See, there are certain things in the detailing business that I would call low cost, high reward, or low cost, high customer, let's say customer reaction, right? Things that take very low energy, very low cost, not a lot of money, very simple, very low time, but they yield very high dividends with your customer in the form of your reputation. So one of those really simple things is this. One of the things that I always do in every detail that I offer is I leave a little gift on the interior for the customer. I'll roll up a microfiber towel, I'll put my business card, I'll put some mints in there, and depending on how expensive the service was that I was offering, I might put a little more expensive gift in there. I might put a water bottle and a koozie and things like that. Just a very simple way to leave something inside the vehicle for the customer to say, hey, really appreciate your business, da-da-da-da-da. It's a very simple way to kind of fulfill or over-fulfill expectations. That is an example of low cost, high reward, low input, high output, okay? But there are things in the detailing world that can easily become high cost, low reward, or high cost, high customer disappointment. Paint correction is one of these areas because the very nature of paint correction represents something that is a difficult area of communication. It's a difficult area to actually bring understanding about with your customer. What I mean by this is, let's say the customer has a black Mercedes like this one that has a fair amount of swirls on it, and it really needs some wet sanding if you're going to get it perfect, and all this sort of stuff. Well, the customer comes to you thinking, hey, this guy's going to be able to really perfect the paint. Well, you're already at a disadvantage in the communication aspect of this conversation because the customer has come in with a level of expectation that is very difficult to actually communicate in an effective way and bring down, because we're not just talking about simple detailing services. We're talking about somebody who's willing to pay a high price, and somebody who, because he's willing to pay a high price, cares a lot emotionally about the visual appeal of his vehicle. So you're talking to somebody who has their emotions wrapped up in it, and somebody who does not speak the language of detailer. They don't understand the nature of the beast. And so it is, if you think communicating when it comes to expectations with just simple regular detailing services is difficult, this area of communication, when you add in paint correction, becomes all the more difficult because it's basically just, the regular detailing service conversation on steroids. People's emotions are more in it. They're more whipped up because it's a much higher, much more expensive service and all that sort of stuff. So my point is, if you are not skilled in this area, and when I say skilled, that's a little bit of an oversimplification because there's a lot of things that affect paint correction, like the type of paint you're working on, the type of machine, the type of chemicals you're using, compounds, polishes, all those sort of things. There are different factors, but let's just boil it down and call it the word skill. If you don't have skill or knowledge in this area, you can in some ways seriously set yourself up for just an unnecessary disappointment, okay? So when it comes to offering paint correction services, you just need to be careful and make sure that this is on your mind. Now, in addition to that, the third rule to beginning to offer paint correction services from a business standpoint is start simple. Now, some of you are thinking, yeah, Luke, I already know I'm going to buy low-cost things. I'm not going to spend a bunch of money. I'm not only talking about that. Yes, when I say start simple, I am talking about don't invest $1,500 in from the onset. Invest a little bit less money. Let's get a proof of concept first. Let's get you some money in before we just start spending everything, right? It's the same concept with just any sort of business in detailing whatsoever. Let's not go sink $1,000 into our detailing business when we've never even detailed for one single customer. Let's get 2 customers under our belt, even though we don't have the nicest equipment, the nicest tools, and let's see what we can do, and let's get some money coming in, some inflow, some cash, some income. In the same way, we want to start simple from a situational point of view, meaning when you get into paint correction, is it a wise thing to take the 10-year-old Mercedes with black paint that's been sitting outside that needs to be wet sanded, 3-stage compound polished, 3-stage paint correction? Is it wise to take on that job? Well, no. The obvious answer is that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, okay? So this situation is actually a great example of something that I'm talking about. So this Mercedes was actually in really good condition. The paint was in really good condition before I ever got a hold of it. So you see me doing bigger areas of the surface. You know, a lot of times there's going to be standard manufacturer's directions on polishes and compounds that say work in a 2x2 area. Well, in some areas of the car, a 2x2 area actually makes a lot of sense because of the nature of the situation of that particular area of the car. But because this particular door and the corresponding doors, around the car are in such good condition, I can actually work and rather than divide the car door into 2 different 4 different sections, I can divide it into 2 different sections because I'm not looking for a crazy high performing, high cutting polish to get rid of 85% of these swirls. There's not a lot of swirls on the paint anyways, so it doesn't take a ton of skill, a ton of time, a ton of following the directions word for word in this particular situation in order to get the results necessary before we put the ceramic on it. So generally speaking, in other really kind of high stakes situations, you're not going to be doing this, taking the whole door in one pass. But because I'm looking for really just a paint enhancement here more than a paint correction, I'm not looking for anything crazy. I'm not having to really operate at that level, at that skill level, right? So this situation is actually a perfect example of what I'm talking about in that we don't have to start as experts. Now, yes, I do wet sanding. I do different things in much more high stakes situations once again, and I've shown videos of that on the channel as well. However, in the midst of all of that, that is not the way to start. It doesn't make sense to start that way. It makes sense to start simple from, yes, a cost level, but also a situational level. Now, the 4th rule in starting in paint correction for your own sake is use the same compounds and polishes in different situations to get a broad perspective. The point here is you can use the same compound and the same polish and the same pad on 3 different cars and you will get 3 different results. It's very, very important that you're not looking through a really thin and small diameter telescope when it comes to paint correction because it's such a subjective nature of detailing. It's really important to what you would call isolate variables at any rate, meaning if you can isolate certain variables, you can measure other variables in the equation. It's kind of like you think about it algebraically, right? Why in algebra do they teach you in any equation you're always going to be taught, hey, let's get x on this side of the equal sign and let's put everything else on the other side of the equal sign because we want to see what x is equal to. So if we can hold all these other things constant, then we can understand what x is, right? So this concept is still true in detailing even though we're not doing algebra. We want to hold these other variables constant so we can actually see what's going on with the other with the single variable that we actually want to measure. So we need to hold these other things constant. So that's why I'm saying take chemicals, take polishes, take compounds, and use them 10 times before you come to a conclusion about them because you're going to see not only everything the chemicals can do themselves, but you're also going to get a very good idea of what is and is not possible, the advantages and, more importantly, the limitations of different things and different systems in the paint correction world. And you really, really, really need that broader perspective in order to communicate effectively with customers so you're setting expectations exactly where they need to be. Now, guys, without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get into the review of the ceramic coating that we're using here. Now, the ceramic coating here is by CarPro. It is their C-Quartz Titanium Oxide Ceramic Coating TiO2. So generally speaking, with ceramic coatings, we talk about silicon dioxide, right, which is like fundamentally what glass is made of. So we're going to get into a little bit of a chemistry lesson here, but before we do that, let's just talk about the nature of the beast. For those of you wanting the immediate answer, yes, this is a fantastic ceramic coating. It's going to last around 2 years, maybe more than that, depending on the level of care that is taken with the particular vehicle it is on. Once again, I cannot make absolute claims about durability and certain things like that because, well, nobody can do that. It's very situational. There's a lot of other variables at play here. However, this particular type of coating is what I would call the intermediate ceramic coating. It's not one that necessarily I think beginners should apply if you're not familiar with ceramics, if you've not applied, let's say, at least 10 to 20 ceramic coatings in your life yet. I probably would not take this one on. However, this titanium oxide ceramic coating is absolutely in that intermediate category in that it takes some knowledge, some precursor experience, that's not the right word, but some previous experience in order to do well. Yes, there is an obvious tendency that I found in applying this ceramic coating where I could see beginners getting a lot of things like high spots, leaving it on a little bit too long, having that tacky feel being really difficult to remove, seeing that ceramic coating tack up a little too early, not knowing what to do about it. So there were some things finicky about this coating. Not that the coating is finicky, but once again, I'm saying I don't think it's the beginner ceramic coating. Of course, in the YouTube description box below, I will be hooking up what I do think is a good beginner ceramic coating, as well as this one, if you guys want to check it out. But it's also at a great price. I think it's like $60 a bottle for the 50 milliliter. But let's get into some specifics. I believe the directions say that we want to do 3 lines of the product down on the suede applicator. That is plenty of product, by the way. And as you use the suede applicator, after about 4 applications is really what I think I was averaging at. After about 4 applications, I would throw the suede applicator away and I would move on to another one. So after about coating 4 different panels, I would just get a new suede applicator. In some cases, you can turn it upside down, but I think after about 4, it's really good to go ahead and throw it away. In addition to that, when you get to about application 3 or 4 with this particular ceramic coating, because you're applying so much coating with those first 2 in that 3 lines on that applicator, I would do 1 to 2 lines the last 2 times you are actually using that applicator, because there's just so much coating on it from the first 2 applications. If we're going with this throwaway after 4 applications model, those first 2 applications give you a lot of coating to work with, and it does become a little finicky if you're just going 3 streaks all the way. You guys could see how just logically that kind of makes sense. Now, I can't remember exactly from the manufacturer's directions what the instructions were. In fact, I believe in the moment there were no manufacturer's directions as far as time to leave it on the paint. I think I had to dig a bit deeper online to figure out what people were averaging with this particular coating. But I believe I would leave it on around 30 seconds to, let's say, 65 seconds, maybe 70, 80 seconds, depending on the panel I was on. For those of you who apply ceramic coatings, yes, there is a time to actually just standardize the amount of time that you're leaving it on the paint, but there's also a time where you will find with, maybe if you're doing a little bit bigger panel, you're doing a little bit smaller panel, you'll find it reacting a little bit differently on different parts of the paint, not in any significant way where it calls for like concern or something, you're leaving it on for significantly more, significantly less. I'm saying there is a little bit of adaptation, especially with a ceramic coating that is a little bit, let's say, more in the intermediate sense of the word. It requires a little bit more education, maybe a little bit more, not even education as much as, let's say, experience in order to pull off properly. Now, that being said, after about 60 seconds, it was clear the ceramic coating was tacking up. You kind of have that like oily appearance where if you see oil mixed with water on the road, it kind of rainbows a bit. That's not exactly the same. It's not exactly apples to apples, but that is essentially what it looks like. And you can see it in different scenes in this video, it tacking up, and you see that streakiness kind of come about. That, after about 60 seconds, was really all it needed on basically 100% of the panels, and so I never really left it over significantly more than 60 seconds. But it is a bit stickier, and really the word I would use is tackier, and the reason I'm not is just because in this, generally speaking, when talking about ceramic coatings, tacking up means, it being ready to be pulled off, but in another sense, tacky kind of means grabby, and that is why I'm putting the ceramic coating in the category I am, because it is a bit time sensitive in that sense, meaning I would be very careful if I wasn't applying it and taking it off fairly quickly and understanding the nature of the beast. The tackiness would have really freaked me out as a beginner in this particular stage, and I could have gotten a lot of high spots, had to go back over things. It would have been difficult to fix certain things, and that's really the main reason I'm giving you guys for kind of the instructions surrounding this particular ceramic coating. Now, just to give you guys a little bit of a technical explanation here from a chemical point of view or a chemistry point of view, because it's kind of good to understand the why behind some of these ceramic coatings, because we talk about the SiO2 ceramic coatings, right? The silicon dioxide ceramic coatings, we kind of explain them and say, yeah, essentially it's a small, tiny layer of glass around the entire area of the car, and yes, that's an oversimplification, but in essence, that really is kind of a good way to conceptualize it. And you might be wondering, why the titanium dioxide? Why the TiO2? And essentially, I mean, it's probably good to talk about this from a general to more specific way. What happens here is, we hear these words like self-cleaning properties and destroys germs and treats the surface and creates a self-cleaning surface. The reason for that is because when the titanium dioxide is actually combined into sort of a network, is a good way to think about it. If you were looking at like the atomic structure of what this looks like if you're in a chemistry class, if you introduce this titanium dioxide into this silicon dioxide network, you end up kind of adding a little bit of steroids to the strength. So you're saying, why do we have this particular chemical? Why not just stick with the SiO2? Well, because you're adding a little bit of strength here. What actually happens is, when the titanium dioxide coating is set on the surface, the self-cleaning properties come from a technical, again, it's maybe a little boring, but a technical chemical reaction that happens because it ends up reacting with like ultraviolet light, right, from the sun. So in chemistry, they call it a photocatalytic reaction. You end up having to introduce the sun into the reactant side, and in the product side, you get something out. So what ends up happening is, in the presence of water, at the presence of H2O molecules, and then you add the ultraviolet light, the TiO2 coating, there's actually a chemical reaction that happens where in the products you take from the reactants the water, and it produces hydrogen peroxide, right? H2O to H2O2. And the hydrogen peroxide ends up helping to clean and kill organic compounds in a sense. And that's where you get this quote unquote self-cleaning. It's why the organic compounds, let's call it rail dust or rain or let's call it water spots or minerals from the water spots is more technical. It's why these things don't grab onto the surface and eat away, because you're having these micro, maybe atomic reactions happening. And so you end up having a little bit of a stronger surface or a more resistant surface when you introduce the TiO2 substance, maybe would be a good way to say it. So there's actually a lot of different like abstracts online where you can, look this up if you're interested. If you're not, I totally understand, but I'm a bit of a chemistry geek, so I just like, understanding it. But once again, when you add those titanium particles in the silicon network, you end up getting these improved self-cleaning properties because there's essentially more surface area with photoactive sites where this reaction can occur. That's essentially what's happening. So enough about that. That probably makes enough sense from what I've said so far, but that is the why behind it. Now, it's also a very reflective surface, right, when you have this particular compound in the ceramic coating. So it works particularly well, in my opinion, on a black car, because you're kind of capitalizing the natural nature of a black car in the first place. A black car really looks banging when it's clean and when it's got a ceramic coating on, but the reason I used the TiO2 coating here is because I really wanted to see what would happen from a visual appeal with this particular thing on what is naturally a car that looks really good. And guess what? I was right about my hypothesis. It looks amazing, right? And in the sun, it even looks more amazing. Some people say that the titanium oxide sort of substance or compound is extremely reflective. Well, we might be splitting hairs at this point. Does it look really that much better than the SiO2 ceramic coatings? Maybe not, but nonetheless, it looks really, really incredible on this black paint. It was also, once again, very easy to apply from the sense of the application. The removal is where you get a little bit more complexity, I might say. Outside of that, you are going to keep, I suggest keeping somewhere between 12 to 20 suede applicators. Not that you're going to go through that many, but it is always nice to have extras just from a very real point of view. When you're a mobile detailer, when you're applying things like this, yes, you get tired, your hands get tired. Sometimes you drop the suede applicator on the ground. It's always best to just throw that away, get a new one. So I like to have reinforcements at every level when I'm applying a ceramic coating. Now, in addition to that, I am using completely new microfiber towels. I always hook up the microfiber towels I use in the YouTube description box below so you guys can see those. So guys, without boring you too much longer, if you want to see the tools and the products used in this video, please go below in the YouTube description box. I lay them out in a very organized way just in case you want to get access to them. Yes, those are affiliate links, and I do get a small kickback if you buy through those links. In addition to that, if you guys want to grab my free guide on how to start your auto detailing business for under $500, I will put that guide link below in the YouTube description box below as well, in the exact same place as everything else that I'm talking about. Guys, other than that, thank you so much for watching. Please smash the thumbs up button if this video was helpful to you. And as always, from Luke here at Wilson Auto Detailing, keep working hard, and I will see you guys in the next video.
Mm-hmm.